Good morning. How are you? Well, we're back in Virginia. I'm getting out early enough for two reasons. It's going to be hot, and that's fine. It's 73 now. But the second reason is that it's expected to rain off and on all day. And it did rain off and on all yesterday, so that's why I didn't do a walk and talk yesterday. So we're back in the groove a little bit. The weather report, of course, is Thomas Jefferson. Right now it's 73 and the winds are about 4 miles an hour, although right here on the road it's absolutely still. And you can feel the embrace of all green in every direction now. It's lush and the birds are noisier and nature is right at hand, palpable. So what are we looking at? Well, our attention is sort of moved a little bit in terms of prosecutions from New York to Arizona. New York is basically, for all intents and purposes, off until next week when the charge to the jury and the summations will occur. The outcome, I expect, will be guilty, and there have been jokes on the air about the jury walking out and coming right back in with a guilty verdict. Things should be so simple. If it weren't for the overall corruption in the case, I wouldn't think for a moment that somebody would try to get to a juror. But it is the mob approach, and when Trump does anything, sounds like mob, acts like mob. Now, I'm not saying it is a mob, but he uses people in low places to do regrettable things that are compromising our society, so we can't lose sight of that. The other thing that we should keep in mind is that it is also possible that there can be a wild card in the jury. The wild card, and I don't know how this has happened, but somehow or other, two lawyers got on the jury. That's very unusual. It's not impossible. It does happen. And I myself, who've been called for jury duty, have never been on a jury for that same reason. One in which the judge asked if the schedule was convenient, and I said I had a deposition the next day. They said, "Are you the witness?" I said, "No, I'm taking it." Both sides immediately conferred, and I was out of that case. It's a federal case in Alexandria, Virginia. It was a good thing there were boxes piled up all around the room for this trial. It was only going to take a few weeks. I doubt it. I didn't check on it, but I know it didn't take just a few weeks. So we traveled from New York to Arizona, and why? Well, a little bit of the history. The Trumpites in force, top leadership, were involved there in the false electors approach and trying to get the legislature to seek to examine the electors and to offer a contrary alternate slate of electors. Now, involved in this, of course, was Rudy Giuliani and some of the the usual suspects, and John Eastman, of course. And surprise, again, we see Meadows, who was chief of staff to Trump. So it's quite an assemblage. There were 18 in all, and Rudy was getting a kick out of the fact that they couldn't find him to serve him, and so apparently he publicized enough that he was having a birthday party for his 80th in Florida, and they served him there. So that was on last Friday. So they have since brought in the defendants, not all of them yet, they're still coming, to enter pleas, usually of not guilty. I say usually, I don't know that anybody has admitted to it yet. And it's about they're charged with basically conspiracy, fraudulent schemes, and even forgery. So those are the charges against, well, you got Meadows, who was formerly chief of staff to the president, then President Trump. And we have the Rudy Giuliani, of course. You may remember from the Hill hearings that he had called the Speaker of the House, the Arizona House, and he said he wouldn't betray his oath. And at one point, Rudy said to him, he says, "We have a lot of theories, but we have no evidence of this." some would think that that was necessary. And that's a Rubicon a lawyer really has to cross. You have to have facts. You have to have a credible basis in fact and law. And if you don't, as has happened in some of these cases, there's hell to pay. There are sanctions issued by the court. And in this time, it's more important, I think, because there are lies and frivolous actions abounding. And some would say, oh, isn't it the same for Democrats and Republicans? As one did say to me in recent days in a friendly discussion. Oh, they're the same. I said, no, it's not on the one hand and the other hand. I'm not saying that the Democrats never could do this, but I'm saying that only the Republicans are doing it with such panache these days. We have not just Rudy Giuliani, but John Eastman. And Eastman, you may remember, had this great idea that the vice president could instead call for a continuance, if you will, so that certain states could decide whether or not to admit alternate electors. And the speaker, the vice president, wouldn't have anything to do with it. He said it wasn't his oath. And Eastman's view at one point, he said to the people in Arizona, do it. Just let the court decide. So this is the backdrop. And what is the significance of it? It is significant because there's going to be an accounting. They're going to be found guilty or innocent. I suspect it's going to be guilty given everything that we know. We have admissions by the players that they just were so cool and so arrogant, they've made statements against interest, you might say, that reveal that this was going nowhere and never could. Now, close to home, we have a Supreme Court dilly-dallying with the following question, and that is Trump immune from prosecution? And among the judges sitting on that question are Judge Alito. But here you have a member of the Supreme Court who is doing what? He is putting up flags, seemingly protesting in agreement with the imbeciles in the MAGA movement. So we have a court considering whether to give immunity, and Alito is one of those, and he's having posted on his own property an upside-down flag, which is a form of objection, if you will, to the government. And then there's also a flag at another location which appeared to be in harmony with the January 6ers. So how do you talk about this when you have a Supreme Court justice who has got a flag up in agreement with the Stop the Steal movement of January the 6th? Not good. So as for the trial, I think everything's been said 7 times about that, and we'll see what new developments there are between now and next week. The thing I like to draw your attention to is, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Mauna Loa in Hawaii, and it has a fabulous base to measure carbon dioxide, and it appears that in the last year it's been faster than at any other time. And there was a time when we were talking about keeping it down to 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide. Now we have crossed the Rubicon, and it's 427 million parts. And this is significant, and it doesn't go away, because the carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere not forever, but for hundreds of years. And so each time we lose ground in terms of conserving the emanations of carbon dioxide into the air, promoting the greenhouse effect, we grow closer to more and more disasters on the planet as it reacts to this. So, what can you do? Bother the government, because, right here in this region, they complain about why aren't we welcoming people who want to move to our area. I'm fine with people moving to our area, but when you facilitate, encourage people to come to an area in such numbers that it exceeds the capacity of the area to actually make them welcome once here. And when you encourage industry to come here, when there aren't the resources to satisfy it, and you want to get pipelines from coal and gas in West Virginia to supply the electricity, and you want to suck the water up out of our aquifers and so forth to maintain this industry, then you're missing the point. And I've mentioned before the tragedy of the commons, and that's a situation in which, one cow on a common is fine. It might not even cost to pay the person who owns the common. But then 10 and 20 and then 100 and 1,000, and then pretty soon the resource for the common is insufficient and in fact exhausted and lost. The world doesn't seem to get this, because businesses in the short run are taking their advantages and saying, hey, you get cheap energy this way. Well, that's one thing to say, but it's another to look at the longer term for yourself, depending on your age, for your children and their children, for the quality of life, even as we're going in the wrong direction. And you have to speak the speech of environmental concern and say it matters to you, or the politicians who are only concerned about keeping their phony baloney jobs and more ready to satisfy oil and gas than they are renewables, who discourage competition if it means China's going to bring EV cars here, and so on. And the world is in a bad place because we're doing things selfish. We're ignoring what should be shared. We don't treat each other equally. And it matters to some people because deep in their small souls, they just want. They want to take, and they don't really care how it affects their neighbor. So, it's a little down, but I think it's the good part is more and more people are facing their, if you will, maker for the misconduct that they did. And I can't be happier to see more and more cases and people disbarred, and all because of the conduct, the bad conduct, the criminal conduct, the conspiratorial conduct to try to steal the office rightly won by Biden. Hopefully, we'll get a conviction in New York. I expect we will. And that will help more people understand that this is not a man you want in the White House. This is not an agenda you want for the people of America. This is not a time for us to lose our leadership in the world because we don't care to do what's right. We just hope it's going to automatically take care of itself. So that's what I got, and here I am in the Cathedral of Trees, and with any luck, depending on rain, etc., I'll see you tomorrow.